Thank you very much. Excited to be here with everyone. Elliott Neff, founder of Chess for Life, and we are on a mission to empower kids in order to enrich this world with a BHAG of 1 million kids per week learning life through the game. So excited to be here in this segment of the business of school programs, right? From classroom to cash flow in particular. So very excited to have our first panelist, Mike Klein, with your extensive experience here. I could go through a number of them, but I think most of us know Fund Master Mike to one degree or another. So, Mike, can you jump right in?
Yeah, thanks, Elliott, for that. It's been great to be on this panel and see all the other speakers. I see a lot of familiar faces. Ron Bucock was my boss 23 years ago, fresh out of college in New York City. I'm dating him. That's when he's only 46 now. Also I worked with Quad, who spoke earlier this morning, just very briefly at CES 70. So that's been fantastic. And before I get going with my talk, I just want to give a real-world example. A lot of speakers are up here talking about how chess helps analytical thinking, cause and effect, risk analysis. And Quad and Rochelle Ballantyne talked about how it helps their careers in both law and in financial services. So I just want to give a real-world example, because I imagine most people here are not attorneys, and you're not day trading trillions of dollars like Quad. So this is an example of how I think chess helped me in everyday life, and I'm going to try to draw a through line. I've never told this story before, but many of you know that I like to travel. I just got back from Saudi Arabia, and that was my 101st country. Many years ago, I was in Malaysia as a backpacker, and I was trying to catch an early morning flight, and I took the train to the airport in Kuala Lumpur. And I didn't realize there are 2 airports in Kuala Lumpur, and AirAsia did not fly out of the one that I was at. I was stuck. I found a guy with a car, and I basically said, here's all of my ringgits, I'm leaving the country, will you take me to the correct airport? And he said yes. I got in the back seat, and right before we got going, some random guy jumped in the front seat with him, and I knew I was in trouble. This is not a good situation. So we're driving down the road, and sure enough, we're 1 kilometer down the road, and the passenger who just jumped in the car turns around and says to me something to the effect of, how much money do you have? So, as a chess player, you have to think on your feet. This is a real-world example. And I had, a couple seconds to consider what to do, and I thought, this guy that jumped in the car, he doesn't know I'm a native English speaker. So my answer, when he asked how much money I had, I said, Malaysia, good. And then, a few miles down the road, he's asking about my money again, and I would say, I like Petronas Towers. So because I was confident and confusing, which, by the way, is a great recipe to get through life, but I was just cheerful the whole time, even though I knew I was in trouble. I was thinking about grabbing my passport and doing a little Liam Neeson tuck and roll move. But before I knew it, they had driven me to the correct airport, and we had a pleasant goodbye. And that, I think, I can't exactly say that being a chess player helps you think that quickly, but I do like to think that there are situations like that that come up in everyday life. So totally a random story. Now, Elliott introduced me as Fund Master Mike. That came later in life. So what I want to talk to you about today really is entrepreneurship, because frankly, we need more chess teachers in the world. And one thing that we don't really talk about when we're selling the game of chess is that if you rise to the rating of 1,500 and you're good with kids, you will never starve in your entire life. Because if you have a skill that parents want, they will pay for it. Piano teacher, tennis teacher, whatever. In fact, chess teachers have an advantage because we can teach an entire room of kids. Probably Elliott, me, P. Diddy, can I go ahead and drop your nickname over there? Some other people that are on this stage. You can teach chess to 50 kids at a time, whereas a piano teacher cannot do that. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the entrepreneurs that are out there in the audience and the online audience about how you actually start a chess program. So in 2001, I was fresh out of college. I needed a job in New York City because I chased a girl. That was a bad idea, but my new career was not a bad idea. Ron in Chess in Schools taught me to become a chess teacher. And when I got tired of New York City, but not tired of chess teaching, I moved back to my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I had to figure out how to start a chess program. Now, I had some experience teaching in the schools. That was nice. But what I very quickly realized is that You need one school that's going to be your anchor school, because when you get one school that you invest so much in, that can be your case study for all of the other schools that you want to end up growing to. The very first principal I approached, I said, hey, I used to teach chess during the day in New York City. She said, absolutely no way, we can't do it. Second school, her first question when I approached her was, are we allowed to do this? And this is 2004. I said, well, you're the principal, you get to make the decisions. But I knew I had her right away. One interesting thing, and this is going to be a little bit of a hot take, I would always bring research study with me. No principal ever asked to look at them. They were either sold on chess before I came through the door or not. I'm not saying there's not a place for academia and research studies. It's just not what my experience showed me. What the principals wanted to see, is this person good with kids, and can this person control a classroom? So it might actually help for you, the rising entrepreneurs in the chess world, to either offer to teach a sample class or have some sort of video of yourself doing so. I think in the last 20 years, chess has become even more accepted as an educationally sound practice. And if you want to come in with research studies, great. It just wasn't my experience that was particularly useful. Now, I offered to teach second grade because, again, that's what we taught in New York City. She said to me, you know what? I have the most flexibility in kindergarten. Can you switch to kindergarten? Wouldn't have been my first choice, but it ended up being what we did at her school. Once you get your first school, your anchor school, you want to invest a lot in making chess part of the culture of that particular school. So we had a dedicated bulletin board where we celebrated achievements. We had names announced on the intercom in the morning when kids did well at tournaments. We had a 5th grade graduation award. So when the kids graduate from 5th grade, whichever kid did the best throughout their time at the school, I'm mostly talking about elementary schools, they got an award, so I was always at graduation. Even though I was not technically on staff, I did almost everything I could to be able to be part of the fabric of the school. Also, one of the best ways for you to curry favor with your anchor school, if we can keep using that term, go to the prospective parent open houses, the ones where the children are 4 years old and the parents are trying to decide where to send their kid for kindergarten. The school will very happily use you to get up in front of these parents and say, your child is going to learn chess as part of the school day when they're a kindergartner. And parents love this message. They love the idea that their kids are going to learn something that they don't know or they don't know well. And they're, honestly, a kid is expected to beat their child after 1 year of chess education, if you ask me, or at least after 2 years. Eventually, the neighbors' schools, without you even having to market to them, will catch wind that chess is being taught at another school, and they will end up contacting you. It almost always happens where there's a little bit of jealousy that you can work to your advantage. And before I knew it, I had 2, 3, or 4 schools. And then before I knew it, I was hiring other instructors because, you can only do so many schools at a time. Also, I want to say we've been talking a lot about inclusion. When you teach chess during the day, you cease to make chess a self-selecting thing that only a certain population signs up for. So we actually had after-school clubs. When you teach chess during the day, you will make your after-school clubs a better mix of the overall population, and you'll get much, much bigger clubs. I'll also say that the in-school programs were funded by the Parent-Teacher Association. And it's really important that the Parent-Teacher Association sees what you're giving back to the school. Because when you're out of school for 5 or 10 years, the principal's going to change. And you need to make sure that your program is so bulletproof that when an administration changes, the new principal doesn't come in and say, chess, what's that? I don't want that. So at my anchor school, every time the principal changed and they were interviewing new principals, the PTA said to the principal, we have chess at this school, that's not negotiable. You need to know that in case you end up getting the position at this school. One other great thing that chess in schools taught me, when you are trying to hone your skills as a teacher, you need to go watch other teachers teach mainstream subjects. Go to the principal and say, who are your most effective teachers? And sit in on those teachers. You will end up learning way more. Like most chess educators, I'm not a trained educator. I had to figure it out on the fly. But it's a nice crash course in exactly what makes other teachers so effective and how you can use that to your advantage as well. Eventually, I did have a successful exit with my chess program. Some of you may have heard of the Charlotte Chess Center because they're now hosting international events. So I was able to merge with them, shall we say, when life got a little bit too busy at ChessKid and chess.com. But I basically want to send the message that you are not just selling the game, you are very much selling yourself. when you go to start a program, the feedback loop will be that your in-school programs will feed your after-school clubs. Some of those kids will go on to play in tournaments, and the kids that play in tournaments will give notoriety to your schools, which will in turn have other schools want to contact you. So whether or not you're in an environment where chess is a part of the culture, or whether you live in, Wichita, I know I'm losing all kinds of fans in Malaysia and Wichita with my speech, but you will be able to start a local chess program by showing that you've got a passion for the game and that you're great in front of kids. And so hopefully for anybody out there wanting to start a local program, you'll get a little bit of inspiration in how I was able to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate that explanation there. And something you said I wanted to bring back out, and that is thinking through the perspective of the school. You may come in, and we come from a culture of chess. Most of the schools in North America do not come from an established culture of chess, except in certain spots. So understanding their language, speaking to that, as you pointed out, they want to know that you're good with kids first and foremost, not good with chess. And as long as you're good with the kids, okay, now we can talk about the next step of how this is going to help. So I appreciate that. But a quick question for you before we move on, as you were talking too about others who might be wanting to start their chess programs. I'm going to jump to the question about, you ran these programs for a long time before you went to Chess Kid, and then of course you incorporated Chess Kid as well. But what is something that was not being done that you came up with that you found was extremely effective in reaching the students in these schools? Would love to start with that.
That's a good question. Yeah, I was one of the first coaches to use Chess Kid. Danny Wrench actually sold me on Chess Kid before he got so big and, runs around the world meeting with everybody in the chess world. What I did was I went around to all the teachers in the school. I went to the art teacher and I said, can you make chess a part of your art? Can you have the kids design art? I went to the media specialist and I said, can I buy some books? So when kids check out books, there's a dedicated supply of chess books. By the way, your best friend is the librarian/media specialist. I used her room for everything. And one little nugget, because we're talking about entrepreneurship and business. Every chess teacher out there, every school has teacher work days. Pick teacher work days that are not federal holidays. Because what happens during these days? You've got a few kids. You need something for your kids to do. So I would have chess mini camps or tournaments at schools on non-federal holiday teacher workdays, and parents would just give me their credit card. Just take my kid. I would serve pizza and make it a whole event. It was a tournament, but not terribly serious. So that's one little itty bitty thing that I did that I don't know why all chess teachers aren't doing. I mean, I'd just say, hopefully nobody from this town is listening, but the IRS, I was printing money. Yeah, so everybody should be doing that.
That's awesome, and I really appreciate it because that even accentuates that point, which is you're understanding the need of who you're serving. And in this case, it was the teachers who have their own kids also, and that's awesome. Can we give another hand to Mike Klein, our first panelist, too? Thank you. Well done. So our next presenter today is Priyadharshan, I believe probably the highest rated on this row here today, Grandmaster in chess, has done so much over the years to impact thousands of students. And I won't go into all the background, maybe you can share a little bit that is relevant, but would like to introduce Priyadharshan. Let's give him a hand as he presents.
Hello everyone, so I'm Priyadharshan, Grandmaster from India, and I want to talk from two perspectives. That one is the school where I was an alumni, so I want to share because it's about the school business and how this, I don't know how many of you know, there is a school in India that has produced more than 15 Grandmasters that is alumni. So at least, close to 1/4 to 1/5 of Indian Grandmasters come from a single school. We all studied at the same school, and also the fact that now I run an online chess education business, so I want to draw my experiences from as an alumni as well as from my own business that now where we teach chess to kids across the world online. So one of the things is that to run a successful online coaching or be a school business, be it, you need to produce some star students, right? Like, they go win some tournaments, that gives the name for the school or the academy, whichever you represent, and so and so. And that kind of creates a virtual loop. So if you create, let's say, one grandmaster or one titled player or one, let's say, a 1500 player, whichever. So then, another student comes in, they become a 1600 and so on. So for example, now I run Chess Gaja. We've been 7 years in this business. So when first 2 to 3 years, maybe the highest rated player we might have produced is maybe a 1800 or a 1900. But now, at the 7th year of the business, now we are have students who are about 2300 USCF, so and so. So it takes a lot of time and effort to create star students, and that will also be the biggest differentiator. Like if you're patient and you build your academy, and then you can also say to schools, like if you are patient enough to build a proper school program, you can also have strong results. And what this would lead is where I would connect it to the school where I'm alumni from. So they started a chess program 20 years ago, and the school name is Velammal. If any of the captains are here, you might have seen this name in the tournament hall, because that's the team that's representing India here. And they had this 20 years ago, they started supporting chess. And when they started, they basically said for all the strong players, we'll give you a lot of benefits, like being part of the school. Like, you can go play these international tournaments, we'll support you as much as possible. And what started 20 years ago, now, as I said, that school has produced 15 plus grandmasters and 100 plus FIDE-rated players. But when they started, obviously, it was an experiment for that school. Like they were, from an Indian context, it's slightly different from, I would say, the US education system. So the Indian education system, like individual schools, obviously, if it's a private school, it's a private school, the one that I went for. And most of the schools in India are private schools, and so and so. So, they have their own budget and so on. But this school, the way they wanted to structure this program is, so we will give, free like tuition, everything to the student. But how are they going to recoup the cost? Like, they are spending on the players. So one of the visions I think they had is that, every time, let's say, a player wins a tournament, right? So they're going to write, an alumni of the school won this tournament. That's how it's going to be published in news articles and print media, wherever it is. And so, if you want to go and get your school on an ad on any print media, you're going to be spending, I think in US should be at least $50,000 or a single ad, possibly. But so this school was getting all the free publicity because they were putting that money into investing on the chess players. And the most successful alumni of the school is someone I'm pretty sure everyone in this hall would know, is Grandmaster Gukesh, world champion Gukesh, right? So every time, they say, okay, Gukesh as one world champion, automatically the school's name is automatically associated with it. So print media-wise, so the cost that, let's say, the investment that a school makes into chess, so they fund, like I said, a cream of top players, and then whoever wants to aspire to be a top player also naturally comes and be parts of an ecosystem. So the school gets to add, that's why they managed to build like 100 chess-rated players from the school in itself. And so the school looks at it from a perspective of, whatever the investment we make, we'll get it from a perspective of the publicity and branding that the school receives from multiple social media and the campaign and so and so. So this is where I would say that an effort they started 20 years ago, so they're managing to get all the benefits now. And from my academy perspective, the way I look at it is, so okay, we are 7 years into this, and when we talk to schools to integrate chess, so most schools, they have this fear, or they are like, okay, so if I invest X amount of money into this, in how many years will I get a return on my investment? Many schools, this is how they talk when I pitch to them in Indian schools and so on. So I tell them, don't look at it like you might break even if purely in terms of how much you're setting up the program. But the real value you would gain is in the publicity that you would get every time your student wins something. So where school leaders with a vision, they are willing to understand this concept and be like, okay, I can get what you're trying to say. Like if I wait for 3 to 5 years and if we build a strong grassroots program and that becomes like, moves on to like where we have titled players, then yes, we'll have all this long term, we'll get the value that we are investing into this particular program right now. But certain school leaders or management, they look at it like, okay, if I do it today, will I be able to get it tomorrow? Like whatever a certain amount of a return on investment, that's not going to happen, at least from an Indian perspective and certain other, I think, geographies as well here. Like maybe, wherever there is a lot of private schools in other countries and so and so. I think they are not, like it takes certain years, and if you have to convince the school management, this is how it's going to work out, and this is if they buy into your vision and they are ready for it, I think you can definitely have successful school programs. And because this point is missed a lot, because if we clearly say them, like, okay, it's like the fact is, the publicity is so much. When Gukesh won in India, like every single major news media had a mention of this school. And at least I would say 1,000+ mentions in different print media. And that's like what every school would dream, that they would like want their name to be in, and so and so. So this is how I would look at it. And when I talk to schools, and also one thing I notice, like sometimes the school would bring a parent or two, and they would ask some questions like, okay, if you set it up, how does it work? And most parents have this question. So I have, let's say, a 6 or 7-year-old kid, and I would like to test like for a year or two, if my kid has the potential, like within like the kid goes to the school, and at the same time, as part of extracurricular activity or something. And and as a parent, they're ambitious. They want to make their kid very good at chess. But the question they have is like, does my kid have enough talent, or do you think my kid is like maybe better suited for other extracurricular activities? And this is one area where I would say that many chess coaches, or sometimes we slightly mislead. What they end up doing is like they say that the kid is extremely talented just to retain the kid in their coaching program. And so that is because more the student numbers in a chess program, it is better for the coach, right? But, and many a times this is the kind of the disappointment after a year or two, when the parent realizes maybe the kid is not improving much. The parent ends up asking like, if you had identified this much earlier, if you had told me, maybe I could have put my kid in a badminton class or some other extra music class or something. And this is where I think going forward, technology would help a lot, because we could easily identify with specific metrics, like, is this kid has the potential to get to like, let's say a titled player at one point in the future or not, and so and so. So this is kind of some of the points that when I go to schools in India and I talk, and the questions they ask quite often to me, and this is how I look at the chess and coaching school business primarily, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And before we go, though, I wanted to come back to, you started to touch on some of the technology, and you have a bit of background in the ed tech space also. As such, how do you see that data and technology can be used both for the student improvement, and also the business growth in chess education? Because on the one hand, you're talking about the importance of having success that creates free marketing, good PR, good such. But how would you use this now from the standpoint of just simply data and technology integrating?
So in my academy, what we do is, so we also work with US students as well. So many times what we do is we feed their USCF ID into, there are like, websites where you can track like, changes on the website and so and so. So what we do is we feed their URL, USCF URL into it. And every week we see, is there a change in their USCF rating? And so and so. So this way, every week, then my team takes a detailed report on, is there a change in the rating of the student and how it is. And then if we see some, like a consistent pattern over a time that, okay, either it's going up or down, the pattern, when it emerges clear, we have a kind of an chat with the parent. Okay, so we see this maybe going positively or negatively. What could be an intervention could be done here from our end or from the parent end or from the student end, how it could be done and how it could have a, if it's positive, how to further accelerate it. If the trend is slightly worse, how to fix it and move towards a positive trend over here. And I mean, most of this now, if we purely track from any online platform, we can see the trends. But if we are trying to track from like a USCFI rating or an academy perspective, I think feeding the URL like a FIDE, let's say even a FIDE rating, we could try to track it on a monthly basis where you get automated reports. There are a lot of sites now to do that. So a lot of academies, I would say, should use more technology, like when they are building these programs. Yet it does add some additional cost to whatever your budget is, but I think in the long term it will definitely, you'll get the return on your investment on these kind of things, I would say. And yeah, that's and I would also say there's still, when I look at a lot of chess academies, there's a lot of scope for tools to be used. And I would say most academies, I would say they are using maybe 5-10% of tools that's available out there on the market. Most of it is still done very manually. But when they automate or also like use possibly these kind of, some of these tools, it would make their life easier and would get in long-term, return on the investment for whatever they're doing. And also it will help the student progress. Because when, let's say, you are able to track a student's consistent performance and tell the parent, they are most likely going to stick to your academy. They're not going to go to another academy or some other chess school and so on. So that's how it helps a lot with student retention, in my opinion, if you're an academy. Yeah.
Thank you, Priyad. Can we give a big hand for... Before we move to our next panelist, I want to add one more piece to this part of the question or the topic, because we're talking also on the business, right, of school, chess, and cash flowing business this way. So what you're talking about here with the data, the technology, the tracking of these, I take it back from the US context. I don't have much experience on global scale for business, even though we've supported projects internationally. But in the US side, I think about the customer. Who's the customer? So as a business owner and entrepreneur, you got to know who's paying the bill. You can have, of course, from a nonprofit, which I started also in others, you can have grants, you can have school districts, you can all of these. But many chess businesses in North America, like how Mike started here and how I myself started, was an individual coaching basis and then growing and scaling that with after-school programs. Who's the customer? The parent, usually, right? And how much do the parents know about chess? Very little in most cases. So when you bring in the tools that you just talked about the tracking and the communication to the parent, you build LTV, the lifetime value of a customer, because the person paying the bill now sees the outcome of what they're paying for, right? And I just wanted to point that out because what you're talking about, I think, sustains it. And
yeah, when kids come home, the parent's not going to be like, do you really know what the night fork is? But if the kid tells some fancy story about being excited about coming home from chess, that's what the parent gravitates toward.
If they're excited about it, and if the parent can see data that tracks over time progress, like the rating graphs and so on.
I just want to add one point to that. Now, with if you're doing an online classes, there's obviously AI summary of it. And what I've noticed is most parents really like this feature because they are not going to be sitting in the class when the class is done. But when they come back home and they can have a chat with the kid, but most likely the kid might say, okay, I just learned tactics or something, but very generic, maybe they might say. But if the parents are able to go through the summary of it, like takes 2 minutes for them to read through, it gives a clear indication, okay, so my kid spent an hour or two productive this day or this week and so and so. So I would say, these kind of things, more integration. We've already doing it at my academy. We've integrated the AI summary feature. I think more academies should also do this because, as you said, when a parent sees the value, they're going to stay with you. If they don't see the value, or if your competitor is going to give you that value, they're going to switch there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you for that follow on too. And let's move to our next. Now we get a perspective from Denmark. We have a co-presenting here, two gentlemen, Jakob Askham-Christensen and Mikkel Norgaard, and a lot of data. And we're excited to hear from you on this next presentation. So please take it away.
Thanks a lot.
Let's give a big hand too. Thank you.
I think we need a bit of help with the tech. Can you put on the slides, please? I guess you'll be there in a short while. Well, I'll start off or kick off this presentation with a brief interview to the Danish Scholastic Chess Organization, and then I'll give the word to my colleague Mikkel, who will give you a deeper insight in the Danish ecosystem, and not least a look inside a Danish classroom. And I'll wrap up our presentation with insights of the key revenue figures in 2024. I have the slides on my phone, so at least I can see them here. Well, we are an old organization established in 1960 by math teachers and headmasters of Danish schools. By now we are 14 full-time employees, and to the surprise of some, only about 1/3 of our employees can play chess. We realized that if we want to build a robust and strong organizations, we need the best employees in all positions. And for instance, our fundraising team, none of them play chess, but luckily they're really, really good fundraisers. And I'll show you that in the figures, revenue figures later on. Okay, so here's the slides I can see. By now we have 550 member schools, that's around 1/3 of all Danish schools. And 2,000 Danish teachers teach chess to the kids in the Danish schools. Around 60,000 Danish children play chess every year. And our turnover in 2024 were $2.4 million. And I'll get back to that later on, but now I'll turn it over to my colleague Mikkel.
Yeah, could I have the next slide, please? Yes, thank you very much. This is a look inside a Danish classroom. Yeah, please stay with the picture. Yes, thank you. A Danish classroom, and at the board you see a teacher standing up. Inside her head is some knowledge of how to teach chess, and we sold that to the school. We also sold the platform she's using to teach kids in the classroom, and the boards they're playing at, well, we sold them to the school as well. It was all part of a full service type of package that we sell to Danish schools, and generally they pay us on average $4,000 to $5,000 to get started teaching educational chess. We have, as Jakob said, about 550 schools in Denmark. So how did we get there? How did we make the cash flow, so to speak? Well, first of all, we realized that chess doesn't speak for itself. At least educational chess doesn't speak for itself. A teacher who has a fleeting knowledge of chess is not necessarily interested in teaching chess as a starting point. But if you show her what chess can do in the classroom, what the game of chess can do for kids that have trouble listening, kids that struggle with math, kids that might be in special needs education, and she sees those kids thriving and sees those kids learning math in a more engaging way, she might start becoming interested. So what we did is we manned up. We have at the moment 7 learning consultants. Some are full-time, some are part-time. And what they do is they take their telephone and they call a headmaster and say, "Have you heard of scholastic chess? Do you know what it can do?" And sometimes the headmaster has heard of it, sometimes he hasn't. "You want to see what it can do in action, and we'll show you this for free." And well, okay, yes, the headmaster says. Well, then we say, but it comes at one condition. We need to have a meeting up front online with your teachers where we tell them about the effects of scholastic chess and where we plan the day. Then we'll come around, we'll teach like 4 or maybe 5 sessions of 45 minutes with different grades. And then at the end of the day, you will sit down with us, your teachers will sit down with us, and we'll talk about which problems, which obstacles, which challenges in your school can scholastic chess help alleviate. All right, says the headmaster, but I might not be able to make the meeting that day. Well, that's okay, we say. Well, if you're not able to make the meeting, then it will cost you $2,000. Otherwise, the visit is free. And up until this point, all headmasters have turned up for the meeting. And this has made the cash flow to some extent, because they do buy our educational programs, they do buy our tech, they do buy our chessboards. But the greatest thing about this thing is that the salaries for the consultants doing the visits are all funded externally. They're funded by partnerships with small and medium-sized foundations. So actually what we're doing is also a sales meeting that we're being paid for. And this has made for a substantial amount of the business we're doing right now. Jakob will get back to some of our other sources of income in a little while, but if I could have the other slide, please, Jakob. The key takeaway from what I'm saying here is the fact that it's a full service type of thing we do. We provide the chessboards, we provide the tech, we provide the knowledge, and we sell it through a web shop and a website. And this has made for a real powerful way of promoting scholastic chess in Denmark.
Thank you. Can we give a hand to our 2 panelists here? Thank you. Before we move on, there's a question I would like to ask for both of you. Not sure who wants to take it. How can the chess organizations and schools create financially sustainable models for chess education that don't rely on the external funding or volunteer efforts?
Well, I might quote myself from yesterday, chess might be cheap, but it's valuable. And we need to convey the fact that chess is valuable and it's worth actually paying good money. So we need to create real products that schools want to pay for, and products that create real value out there. So we need to be able to build organizations and products that work on the terms of the market.
Yes, if you don't mind me expanding that just a little bit, one of the biggest challenges we face if you go to schools is their budgets, right? They must get approval on all these budgets and the expenditures of them. So of course you have to show the outcome to get the buy-in for it. So could you go maybe a little further on like what innovative revenue streams or partnerships you've proven to be most effective? Because you've obviously seen a large percentage of the schools already.
Yeah. Each time we identify a societal problem, obstacle, challenge, math difficulties, for instance, has been a thing in Denmark. 15% of Danish kids leave school without sufficient capabilities in math. There are always money in trying to help alleviate these problems. And large foundations, as well as the government and the schools, are willing to pay you if you can make the case for actually being able to alleviate these problems. So right at the moment, we're doing an intervention with some schools and a large foundation called Egmont Fonden, which try to develop new ways of teaching math. So we're looking at math from an entirely different perspective and asking teachers, what is math to you? What is math to your kids? Could you imagine a play-based way of teaching math? And this seems to resonate real well with foundations, decision makers, and with the kids as well.
Absolutely, and I love your, if you can't make the meeting, $2,000. It's a wonderful way to make sure the decision maker is there. Let's give one more hand to our Mikkel and Jacob. Thank you. Thank you. So our next panelist is Michal Kanarkiewicz. And with his background as a TEDx speaker, chess player, author of 7 books, he teaches the secrets of business and life strategy using chess as a metaphor. He also has drawn with the 12th world chess champion, Anatoly Karpov, in a simo. Many other successes in his career with the big companies he's worked with. Please welcome Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a second for a presentation. So, okay, I see a presentation here, but what about here? Okay, thank you. So, why is chess more than just a game? My name is Michal Kanarkiewicz, and I'm a chess player, 2100. Also, I served as the marketing manager for FIDE World Rapid and Beast Chess Championships in 2021 in Warsaw, Poland. Currently serving in European Chess Union at the Media and Communication Commission. And I run my own company, strategic consulting company for the biggest brands worldwide. Okay, thank you. Yeah, now it's better, thank you. So, as you can see here, there are some brands that I work with. These are my clients, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Dell Technologies, and many, many others. I'm deeply passionate about the connection between chess and business and life as well. So today, I'm going to tell you about the top 3 transferable skills from chess into business and life, because I think it's an important topic to tackle. Yesterday and today, many speakers talked about chess as a tool, and I think it's good to know what are the skills that kids right now teaching chess, they can somehow get in the future. So, the top 3 transferable skills, based on my research, I did it in the last couple of years, partly together with Koźmiński University in Warsaw, Poland. That's the best Central and Eastern Europe business school, according to the Financial Times. And there are top 3 transferable skills. The first one, which is kind of obvious for us chess players, is strategic thinking. Timur Turlov, yesterday, he talked a bit about strategic thinking. But what is strategic thinking? So for me, strategic thinking involves making investments now to gain an advantage tomorrow. That's strategic thinking all about. And let me give you a powerful example of using strategic thinking in business that is related to chess. So all of us know about the matches between Garry Kasparov and supercomputer Deep Blue from IBM. But I think there is even something more interesting behind the scenes than match itself. That's the business that IBM did around this match, because they were struggling back in the 90s. And the match was a game changer for them. Because, you know, there were 2 matches. Yeah, the first one, which Kasparov won in 96, and then rematch, which unfortunately he lost in 97. But the thing that is very important in business is that IBM stock's value has a dramatic increase after these 2 matches. As you can see here, the first peak was right after the first match, and the second one was after the rematch. And total growth in those 2 years was approximately 130% after these 2 matches. Of course, not only match has happened, there were also other factors, but based on that match, IBM's stock value has increased 130%. And using ROI, it stands for return on investment, a very important metric in business, we can see that, by the way, there's a great mini-series, it's called Rematch, that tells the story behind the match between Kasparov and Deep Blue. That we know IBM invested $10 to $20 million approximately, and in return, they've had $74 billion in market value, which means ROI was approximately 700,000%. That's called one of the biggest strategic ROIs in tech history. Because IBM was thinking strategically. They did it differently. Because you need to know that back in the 90s, there were a lot of tech companies, they were competing each other. For instance, Microsoft with Windows 95, they had a flop, a launch flop. There was even a long, 55 minutes long video with Jennifer Aniston and Matthew Perry. You know them from Friends series. It was a bit long and it was a flop. But on the other hand side, IBM created a powerful narrative, man versus machine. And it was thinking strategically. Because the lesson afterwards is that strategic thinking means to think different. The second one, skill that you can transfer from chess into business, is scenario analysis. Of course, during the game of chess, you have a lot of lines. You think like, I want to play this or that line, and so on. You know that from chess. But what it means in business and life? In each and every discipline, we have icons like Cristiano Ronaldo, Leo Messi, or Michael Jordan, LeBron James. For us, in chess, it was Kasparov and Karpov, back in 80s and 90s. I had the pleasure to play against Karpov in the chess simul in 2020. I was, of course, very excited, but at the same time terrified, because, you know, Karpov was and is still a great legend. And in order to play the game, I've prepared 3 plans. I called them A, B, and C. So my plan A was to play an open position, to go for an open position, because Karpov prefers to play close ones. My plan B was not to exchange queens, because I wanted to keep attacking chances alive. And plan C was not to enter the endgame phase too early in the game, because, as you know, Karpov is one of the best players when it came to the endgame. But what happened? By move 8, Karpov decided to play a closed opening. So my plan A failed. By move 13, he exchanged queens. So my plan B also failed. And surprise, surprise, by move 18, he forced me to play an endgame. So my plan C also failed. I was stuck. My all plans, A, B, and C, failed. And then I thought, oh my God, it's gonna be difficult, because, you know, as I teach managers to think strategically, think several moves ahead, to have a lot of different scenarios and so on, but when it came to the moment of truth, I simply failed, unfortunately. But then I recalled a rule of thumb, which is, even when your plan A, B, and C fail, you can still create a plan D, which was, for me in this case, to play a gambit. I sacrificed the pawn to have more open position. I played a gambit in a way, and after close to 5 hours fight and 44 moves, I managed to draw in a chess simul exhibition. Here is the proof, photo and the chess score sheet from Ustroń in Poland, beautiful city. By the way, Łukasz is going to join us in Ustroń tomorrow, if I'm correct. Yes, Łukasz is with us here. So I'm not telling you this story to show off. Okay, maybe a bit. But joking aside, I'm telling you this story because I think scenario analysis is a very powerful tool that you can use on a daily basis. And let me give you an example. Let's imagine that it's your future. Like, candidate move is a potential move that seems worthy of further analysis. In chess, you have several moves. But what if we take this to life and business? So let's imagine that you have scenario optimistic, something great happens with a positive impact, like you've got a promotion, you've had a great client, and any kind of big opportunity that you didn't expect. Then you have scenario realistic, which is you continue on the same path as the last year. And the last but not least is scenario pessimistic, when something bad happens in your life with negative impact. It's called very often in management books, it's called black swan. Black swan is a major event that has a great impact, that is unexpected. Let me give you an example, like financial crisis in 2008 or COVID-19 in 2020 and many others. Black swan doesn't have to be negative, it can also be a positive one. But in this case, let's focus on the negative black swan. So this kind of scenario analysis I teach managers to use, and as you can see, it's kind of a map. And we do it as a chess players. And you teach that to your kids, to have a map and to adapt based on opponent's moves. And recently, because I run my own podcast, it's called Strategic Move, Strategiczny Ruch in Polish, I interview a lot of CEOs. And one of my guests was recently Dariusz Petrowski. He is a CEO of Dell Technologies Poland. And he said that I have seen a lot of strategies made with heads in clouds. They looked wonderful on paper, but didn't succeed because they were disconnected from the reality. So I think that's a very good quote, because scenario analysis keeps you grounded. You can have a great strategy, tactics, and so on. And also Timur talked about this yesterday. But at the end of the day, you need to adapt. You need to be flexible. And in order to be flexible, I think scenario analysis is a great tool, a powerful tool that you can use, and your students also as well. And last but not least, skill that you can take from chess into business and life is decision making. You know, during the game, you make a lot of different decisions. And one of them, which I found very interesting, is playing gambits. Gambit, we know, like when you sacrifice something to get something even bigger in the future. Like when you sacrifice a pawn, the queen's gambit. You have to sacrifice a pawn to have more space in the center. So I think about gambits, we can look to the sponsorship. And there was a discussion about sponsorship today, earlier on. Because sponsorship might be kind of a gambit. There are a lot of companies who invest into soccer, I mean football, basketball, Formula One, tennis, golf, and many others. But at the same time, there are also companies who do it completely differently. And in this case, in my view, the Freedoms Company Corp, they play a kind of a gambit. Because as an input, they input money, and as an output, you see, because Timur also talked about it yesterday, implementation of the company's vision and mission and create synergies between finance and chess. There was this conference, Wall Street Gambit. There are a lot of several different also other activities. I call it the Freedom's Gambit, but as you can see, playing Gambit, it's like when you sacrifice something to get something bigger in the future. And when you know the rules of chess, you know that you can somehow make better decisions because, for instance, you can play the Freedom's Gambit or any other company that you want to engage with. I'm not telling today about the Freedom's Gambit because they are the sponsor of this conference. I'm telling you this because I think that's a powerful way of thinking, and that's something that we can teach kids through chess. And so to sum up my presentation, I would like you to remember that there are the top 3 transferable skills from chess into business and life based on my research together with Koźmiński University, the best Central and Eastern Europe business school. The first one is strategic thinking, scenario analysis, and the last but not least, decision making. And if there is only one thing that I want you to remember after this presentation, let it be this. Chess is more than just a game. Chess is a platform that helps you to think strategically, anticipate moves by doing scenario analysis, and make better decisions both in business and life. Checkmate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Wonderful. We will, for the sake of time, move on to our last panelist, and then if there's time at the end, we might have time for coming back around for a question or two. But our next presenter is Daniel Weissbarth, co-owner at Silver Knights Chess Academy. He has overseen the company's growth from 10 locations and a few hundred students in 2009 to more than 350 sites and 15,000 plus students each year in their various programs. So please welcome Daniel Weissbarth.
Thank you so much, Elliott, and thanks for having me here. I want to start with kind of a strange tangent, which is a few years ago when we were in the hospital after my oldest child was born, my wife and I were talking, and we just couldn't believe that they were just going to let us leave with the baby. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. It was unbelievable. It's like, we just take the baby and go home? That doesn't seem right. And a lot of running the business and growing it actually is kind of like that. You don't know what you're doing, you haven't done it before, and you just kind of have to figure it out as you go. And there were kind of three main roles in our growth that I went through, and I worked with my brother the whole time. He's my co-owner. But there were kind of three main roles that I went through. And the first thing I did was I started as a coach. And like Mike and some of the other people who've talked, I didn't have any formal teaching training. I was a pretty good chess player. But I just kind of showed up and started to figure it out. And I wasn't a natural teacher. My mom has a story she likes to tell of when I was 6 years old at our school chess club that she ran, where she left me to teach another 6-year-old how the rook moves. And she came back after like 40 seconds. And I was like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you get this? This is so easy. And that was where I was when I was 6. When I started in my early 20s, I was probably in a better place. But it wasn't something that came naturally to me. And I had to work really hard at it. And after each class, I would think really hard about what went well, what I could do better, how things had worked for the kids, think about the feedback the kids had given me along the way. One amazing thing about working with like 7-year-olds is that if you're doing something and it's boring, there's a good chance somebody will raise their hand and you'll call on them and they'll be like, this is boring. And then you'll be like, oh, okay, I have to figure out how to make this more exciting for the kids. And I did that for a while, and I got better, and I became a pretty good coach. And then the company grew a little bit. And then we grew a little bit more, and we started hiring coaches. And this was, again, something that I didn't really have any experience with, and I didn't really have any experience training people or helping them after they'd been hired, and just had to kind of figure things out as we went. And not everybody worked out right, and with each person we hired, if they didn't work out, or if they did, you kind of have to think through, like, okay, was this the right person to hire as the coach? Was the training they went through right? Was the curriculum we gave them right? Was the support they had after they started right? Because if you don't do any of those things correctly, like if any of those things is wrong, the coach isn't going to be successful, and ultimately that's your mistake. And so after lots and lots of trying and thinking and learning from mistakes, we got pretty good at that, and the company grew a little bit more. And we got to a point where we needed to hire people to help with hiring, like human resources people, and also people to help manage the coaches and after-school programs. And I think this is probably the hardest step, and it's the step where a lot of academies either can't make this leap, or they get here and it goes really wrong for them. And there's kind of two challenges, but one of them is, just like from a business perspective, the business is very simple when you're alone teaching at schools. Every time someone signs up, you get a few dollars. When more people sign up, you get more money. When you start hiring coaches, it stays pretty simple. You can kind of say like, okay, if I have 10 kids in the class and the coach gets paid this amount, and the kids each pay that, I don't know, I'm keeping about half of what we bring in from each extra program. When you start adding admin staff, it gets a lot harder. And the first big problem is the salaries are pretty lumpy. It's not like you can just add, 5% of an admin person or 10% of an admin person. You have to hire that whole salary. And one thing that I think is really scary for a lot of academy programs is they get there, they're like, wow, my life is miserable, I'm working 60 hours a week, I really need to hire someone to help me. And then they think about it and they're like, oh, if I hire this person, I'm actually going to earn less money next year than I did last year. That doesn't seem great. And for us, we kind of got there, and we decided that it was worth it and that our ambitions for what came next were important enough that we wanted to do it, and we just kind of grew through that. And like hiring teachers and coaches, which I'll use those terms a little interchangeably, there were new challenges here. And one thing we did that was a little bit of a mistake that I think my friends in Denmark also encountered a little bit is that if you just take your best chess coaches and then are like, okay, you're really good at this, we're going to promote you into this other role, they might just not be good at it. And it's a totally different skill set, like maybe 100% different or 85% different. And it wasn't that none of the coaches we promoted worked out, but it wasn't as many as you'd want. And so as we went through this, we had to, again, think through, like, okay, is this the right person? If it's a person who I think is really good and really aligned with us and what we do and thinks what teaching chess to kids is important, are they doing the right job here? Did we train them correctly? Did we give them the right support after they started? And if you get any of those things wrong, the person isn't going to succeed, and that's really on you. And so we did that, and after each mistake, we went and we thought through it, and we learned. And if you think about it, that process is actually very similar to what you do when you play a game of chess and you lose, and then you go back and you review it later. And that skill where you take something that goes wrong in your life, and then you break it down into what did I do wrong, what should I do the same next time, what do I need to do better and differently, is a really core life skill. And it helps with building a business. And it's also really the biggest thing that I want kids to take from our programs, I guess besides a love of chess, where that's something that works for you when you're in a math class and it doesn't go well, or you have something in your personal life that doesn't go well. And so basically by the time we got to 2020, we had a pretty stable program. I think we were maybe the biggest after-school chess company in the country. We also did camps and tournaments, and it was going pretty smoothly, and it was basically a well-oiled machine. And that's obviously an ominous place to stop this, because you guys all know what happens next, which is everything just completely shut down. And I think it was on March 13th, 2020, we essentially canceled every class we had for basically forever. Like, we didn't have any classes, we didn't have any camps scheduled. We kind of had to look at the bank account and be like, okay, when are we going to run out of money? And the answer was really, really soon. And we had to pretty brutally just lay off 200 coaches and the 20 people who worked in our office, and maybe 150 chess coaches and about 20 people in our office. And if you'd asked me in February of 2020, like, what do you think about teaching online? I would have been like, it's a bad idea. We're the wrong people for it. Here's 15 reasons why. And they were like good, correct reasons. They weren't like, I wasn't wrong about that in February. And then on like March 16th, I was like, okay, my new life is trying to figure out how to teach kids chess. And so my brother and I kind of divided responsibilities, and he was focused on like trying to get out of our lease on our office space and dealing with like all the paperwork he had to deal with layoffs. And mine was like, can we figure out how to teach chess online? And we kept 2 of our office staff, and we had to lay off all the coaches. And one of them, her job shifted from like managing school programs and coaches to just like, we had an office full of supplies and she just had to sell everything. And it was like trying to sell shelves and computers and whatever else we had in there. And so it was really hard. And basically we had to go through all those steps of learning to teach, learning to hire coaches, learning to hire admin staff again, but much more quickly. And so I started teaching online classes. And I went from being something where I was teaching like 1 hour a week of after-school programs, and then we had, 150 other chess coaches teaching the other 3,980 kids in our programs, to just like, I was teaching all the kids, and I was starting from scratch, and I didn't know what I was doing. And after each class, I would take notes on it. And I kind of have 2 big moments that stand out in my memory. The first was trying to teach a beginner class of like 5- and 6-year-olds who'd never played chess before. Like, this is how you play chess from the beginning. And at some point after like 3 weeks, it was just kind of working. And I felt good. And like, one of the kids was visibly excited over Zoom, and the other kids were all really engaged too, and things were clicking for them. And then the other milestone in there was we had our first new student sign up who didn't know us from in-person programs. And it was just a kid who found us from New Jersey, which is, a couple hundred miles away. And I was like, wow, okay, if we have new people finding us, maybe there's something really here. And so that was going okay, and we brought back some coaches, and we had to figure out, okay, who do we hire for this? Which people will succeed? It's not exactly one-to-one with people who are good in-person coaches. And then that went on for a year, and we were kind of like chugging along, and we were basically after about 3 months or 4 months, we were self-sufficient with the online programs. And then in the spring of 2021, it was time to reopen for the in-person programs. And the first time we built the company, it was about 14 years. And the second time when we rebuilt it, essentially from the ground up, it was about 14 weeks. And it was very stressful, and it was a situation where we were hiring managers who obviously hadn't managed classes, and they hadn't even seen our classes before because nobody had, and they were helping hire the coaches. And the whole thing was felt like it was held together with duct tape. And it felt a little bit like when my second child was born last month, where unlike with the first one, it wasn't outrageous that they were sending us home with a baby. It made sense. We knew what we were doing, but we were just so tired all the time, and there was so much to do. And so we kind of came out of the pandemic, and we came out much stronger, and we're teaching probably 50% more kids in person than we were before. And then our online programs have grown pretty substantially, and July was our biggest ever month in terms of online students, even bigger than when nobody was going to school. And those programs have grown into something really cool as kind of a next step for kids who grow out of their after-school program especially, where we have kids from all 50 states now, we have kids from around the world, we had 11 kids win state championships in 2025. And so those programs are something that have kind of grown into an incredible supplement to our in-person program. And one of the big things was just kind of taking that process of taking something that goes wrong, learning from it, iterating, and then coming up with the next step in that process. Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate that. So a couple of comments I wanted to make at the end here with both my experience at Chess for Life and what was said here. And I think what you may have heard was the chess skills in action in most of our stories, right? Talk about the problem solving, the unexpected comes up, and how do you evaluate, analyze, make a decision, and move forward. And as much as you can analyze, you never anticipate everything. So when surprises come, how do you handle them, right? And I would say hats off.
My microphone.
What's that?
That's a surprise. You stole my microphone.
Yeah, exactly. I had to, right? Because one of them died. So a comment I wanted to really wrap up here is, as we're talking about this business of classroom to cash flow, I think it's important, and I think we can recognize that in chess, there's not yet, as we saw even in an earlier presentation, the dollars to the same degree as many other industries. I've had many parents and students come to us and talk about, oh, how good's my kid? Can he be professional? And I'm like, well, if you learn chess right and you learn what we're teaching, which is life skills through chess, your kid will probably not pursue chess eventually, right? Not everyone's going to be Gukesh or some of the other top 10, not percent, but 10 players who make the amazing income. Now that has changed somewhat in the last 5 years, thanks to esports of chess now and how it's being marketed. I like to say just like golf and other activities, poker, it has become a spectator sport. You know, brands aligning, there is more dollars coming into it. But from the business of chess, if you don't have a heart for impact among youth, don't get into it. There's so much easier ways to make a living. And from my experience at Chess for Life, we grew in our first 10 years from just serving every kid. We did anything that was good for kids and then tried to make it work financially. So we had enrichment after school, we had 9 buses busing kids to us. We did math, we did tutoring, we did homeschool, we did everything, but everything included chess because that was the fundamental. Then the pivot point came just over 10 years ago where the vision was, what would it take now to impact 1 million youth? And since then, that was the journey, and of course, COVID impacts that too. But because of it, we started turning it into an actual business. So eliminating the complexities that don't scale well. figuring out what can we do, what can't we do, and asking ourselves the questions, what is the number one choke point for achieving that vision? And the number one we came up with, which I didn't hear mentioned yet because of just the various aspects we were covering, I wanted to mention, which I think it was touched on briefly at one point, and that is chess players are not necessarily good teachers. So how do you find the educator to help the kids, right? And so in our plan of impacting youth, we set out, as I mentioned at the start, our vision is empowering kids to enrich the world. We had to expand that to empowering educators to enrich the world by empowering them with the tools. And what do most people who don't play chess think about chess?
It's hard.
Hard, complex, I'm not sure I can do it, right? So by developing tools that today I can say we can take 2 hours with any educator, any group of educators, and the largest group has been 300 so far. 2 hours, we give a pre-survey question, what's your confidence level using chess? And the common response is, can I use negative numbers? If they don't know chess. And the joke, of course. But, ones and twos. And after 2 hours, the average response works out to 9.2 out of 10 that they can use chess. So how you bring it to change the mindset of the educators is key, in my view, to solving the question of impacting the youth. And so that's what we do. We have one district I'm flying to tonight, and there's 46% of the districts. It's another large Florida district. 84,000 kids used our tools this last year. And the 4 middle schools have chess as an elective course. But again, what is the ROI now to sell it to the schools in the district? In the middle schools, it's an elective course. And you know why they do it? Yes, there's good math and alignment and all of these pieces. But the number one response is parents are saying, my kid wants to go to school when there's chess. So attendance is actually the selling point for the principal and the teacher. You see, so understanding those pieces I think is very important. The ROI, the LTV, all these things we could dive deeper if we had more time, and I wish we did. But can we give our whole panel a big hand for their contribution today on the business of chess? Thank you. I think we are out of time, aren't we? 2:30 on the dot. Isn't that when we're supposed to end? I tried.
Round of applause for Elliott Neff getting us to lunchtime.
So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.